Hi, today I'm going to go through how I made a Kontakt sample instrument out of this little beauty, which is an auto harp. It's I bought it for 20 quid off eBay. My guess is it hasn't, well, it definitely hasn't been used for decades. Very out of tune. However, rather nice. It came complete with all of its strings, which is rather good. Um, and a lot of dust. So the first thing I needed to do with this was to tune it because it hadn't been tuned for decades. As a quick interesting aside, man, my hair's really bad. I've just come back from walking the dog in the rain, which is probably why. That's not the aside. Was this thing here, which I used to tune the auto harp with. Um, I've had this in my toolbox. So I've got an appalling toolbox that's full of rubbish and debris that I literally haven't cleaned out for decades. And this has been kicking around in the bottom of my toolbox for years and years and years. I've never known what it is. And it's just sort of a really good example of one of those things that's sort of keeping it, and one day it'll come in handy. So I wanted to tune the auto harp, thinking I would need an Allen key or a hexagonal key or something. And my hand automatically came to this, and it fits absolutely perfect. It's like it is an auto harp or piano tuning peg or something. I don't know where on earth it came from, but I have possessed it most of my life. And only at the great age of 53 has it actually its use come to fruition. So that was really, really quite weird. Okay, so once we were in tune, the next thing to do was to get a bit of an organizational plan. The main problem was that I knew I needed to record a number of different notes in a number of different velocities, but sort of knowing what to do and organizing myself was actually my main issue with this. I decided in Cubase just to do it really simply. I made a marker track, and I had one region here for the soft sounds, one region here for medium volume, and one region for loud volume. So I'm basically thinking that I'm going to have three dynamic layers. So when you press the key on the keyboard, if you press it gently with a low velocity, then obviously you get a quiet sound, and Kontakt will it will play one of these soft samples here. If I hit the keyboard a bit louder, so you'll get a medium velocity, a medium dynamic level, and if I hit it hard, I'll get a loud dynamic level. So my worry was that I was going to have to do this for every single note on the auto harp. I was going to have to record three dynamic levels, which is quite a challenge. It's actually quite hard playing an auto harp at different volumes anyway. But you don't need to do that. You only need one per octave. The auto harp has a low G on it, and then it basically goes up in 2 octaves of Cs. So I decided I was going to record the low G, which is the lowest note. I was going to record the low C, the middle C, and the high C. So there's three Cs basically in a low G. And then I'll show you later, but in Kontakt you can fill in the gaps. You don't need to record every single note in between. So very carefully, and one at a time, I recorded each of the notes. Let's just have a look at this middle C line for a minute. I recorded each of the notes a few times to sort of make sure that I got some sort of consistency. And my plan was that I was going to end up with three different versions of the same note. So if you listen to this is the same note three times. Oops, it would help if it was soloed. Let's do that. So I've got three middle Cs there, all at a soft dynamic. They all sound slightly different, and my plan therefore is to create a round robin in Kontakt, which means that it won't play the same note every single time, which just sounds a little bit more natural. Otherwise you get a bit of a a bit of a sort of machine gun approach. It just sounds all a little bit too much. So I've got three different versions of each of these notes. So 1, 2, 3 versions of three different notes: high C, middle C, low C, and the low G, all at a soft dynamic level. I then recorded exactly the same at a medium dynamic level. Let's just have a listen to those just by way of contrast. And then the same thing at a loud dynamic level. They're not quite all the same, but that's fine. Okay. And then the real time-consuming part of this for me was actually cutting these samples down, because obviously the recording looks something like that. And I did probably 6 or 8 of these and just chose the best ones of them. And I learned a really valuable lesson, which was that you need to cut each of these samples right at the transient point here. I did it a fraction before, I think, or it even didn't zoom in enough first time when I made the instrument, and it created obviously some delay. I don't know why I just didn't think. But you need to cut it right on the transient, so you do need to zoom in. There needs to be no silence here essentially, and you need to cut literally there. And then put a little, let's just go back out, there we go, and put a little fade at the end as well, so it just tails out naturally. For me then, in Cubase, I then have to bounce each of these out, so I can do that by doing Alt and P, which puts my region around this particular note. And then for my version of Cubase, which is just the basic one, I just do export and do an audio mix down. There's probably in other DAWs and maybe the more expensive versions of Cubase a better way of doing that, but for me that's how I had to do it. And I ended up then with, let's find the actual file, the actual folder, libraries, my sounds, auto harp, recordings. So in the end it all looked like, there we go, like that. And it's not particularly scientific how I named them. There's probably a better way. But for the high C, then I've got high C loud. I've got 3 loud high Cs, slightly different. 3 medium high Cs, 3 soft high Cs. Same thing for the low C, same thing for the middle C, and the same thing for the low G. So having got everything recorded and into a neatly named folder, which for me it really was quite time consuming and the most tedious part of this whole process really. Then the fun part came, and it was time to put the samples into Kontakt. Okay, so now in Kontakt, it's worth remembering that you need to do the oldest version of Kontakt that you have. So my oldest one is Kontakt 5, which means that when you, if somebody else wants to use this other than yourself, if they've got a version of Kontakt higher than Kontakt 5, they'll be able to use it. So the problem being this, I think the current version is 6 or 7, I don't know. So I don't want to make it in 6. I've got Kontakt 6 point something or other, I think, because that'll mean that anybody that's got an older version won't be able to use it. So I'm making it in the oldest version that I possibly can. So we open Kontakt, and it's really straightforward. We make a new instrument here, which is this here, and then we click on the little spanner, and we need to go to Mapping Editor. And we've got the keyboard here and all of the notes here. Now at the same time as that, I need to have all of the pre-recorded samples in front of me like this. Now my plan was to do round robins, so I was going to do 3 versions of each note. So for example, this C high, loud high C, there was 3 different versions. It's basically the same thing, but they sound slightly different to avoid the machine gunning effect. I'm going to do that at a later time. I think I'm going to make it without the round robins for the moment, and then maybe add that in later and maybe do an extra video for that. So I'm just going to do 1 round robin per note. So I've got my high C and I've got 3 different versions. So all you do is just pull it in. So I've got my loud high C here. So I'm going to pull it in. I think that's probably high C there. Doesn't matter for the moment. And this is my loud version. So I'm going to put it right to the sort of upper part here. So think of this as being volume, and this is pitch along here. So that's my loud high C. This is my medium volume high C. So I'm going to pull that over there, put that in there like that. Just squash it down a little bit so that it fits in. Let's pull that down a little bit. Okay. So that there. And then my low volume high C loud, high C soft, there we go. And that needs to go in there like that. And put that down like that. So this refers to velocity. So what's going to happen is that if I press the keyboard on that C there quietly, or not very hard, it's going to play the low velocity here. If I press it harder, it'll press the medium velocity, and if I hit it really hard, it'll press the high velocity here. This is only one note, obviously. So what we need to do is to pull this down an octave. So that's going to go down there like that. Do the same with the mid ones. And the same with the high ones. Now obviously this boundary here is adjustable, and you can change it depending on how it feels once you get it on the keyboard. I'm going to change this, save this rather now, and then open it in Kontakt. So let's save edited instrument. Let's call this one the new auto harp. Okay, so save. There we go. I'm going to close it here, and I'm going to open it up in Cubase. So let's just put a new, what's that? That's a piano. Let's add a new track. Kontakt 5. Okay. What do I call it then? Auto harp main. That could be it. There we go. Okay, so you can see here that I've basically just expanded the same thing. That's the high C there. That's the middle C, the low C, and down to the G there. And then now where I play on the keyboard, you can see where the red dots are. And we've got an instrument. That's it. What I have done is had a play down here. I had a bit of a play with the attack and the release. And I also inserted a reverb here as well, just to give it a tiny little bit of sound, a little bit of body. That's it. The auto harp. So anything will work the same. You just put it in, drag it down, not upwards. It doesn't really sample very well upwards, but drag it downwards. You can get your 3 velocity layers, and in a very, very simple nutshell, that is how to make a Kontakt instrument.